In this video, we're going to talk about democracy and why it's overrated, and why most Americans don't care about living in one. So hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you stay educated on how your money works. Imagine a candidate you like. This politician has everything: the right positions on taxes, abortion, foreign policy, immigration, sound judgment, and enough personal charisma to be trusted with your wallet, house keys, and even your email password. Now imagine that candidate says or does something anti-democratic. For no particular reason, he shuts down polling stations, or at a rally he tells supporters that a particular journalist standing over there in a nice sports coat is asking too many questions and might deserve to get rabbit punched on the way to his car. This purely theoretical scenario, which of course bears no relation to anything that has happened or is happening in American politics, is the subject of an article in the American Political Science Review by Matthew H. Graham and Milan W. Svolik of Yale University. How much do voters really care about democracy? Nearly all Americans say democracy matters, but how many will actually punish their preferred candidate and withhold a vote when that candidate does something undemocratic? About 3.5% of voters will defect from a candidate whom they would otherwise support, but who does something destructive for the democratic process. Those 3.5% come from the right and the left in equal proportions, but they tend to be moderate. If you just ask people whether they like democracy, there's a social norm that says they have to answer yes. They have been conditioned since grade school to say democracy is good. They surveyed 1,691 people and posed instead a version of the hypothetical question I just said earlier. You say you like democracy, but will you sacrifice other things you like on its behalf by withholding your vote for a democracy-bashing candidate? Some will, but the punishment is small. Those willing to vote for the opposing candidate often do so only if he is similar to the candidate they intended to support in the first place. That means partisanship encourages more anti-democratic action. Stronger partisans will let the thuggishness slide, if they would have to sacrifice more than a small portion of their positions. The greater the number of strong partisan voters and politicians, the smaller the punishment for violating democratic norms, and the more likely the norm breaker is to get elected. So Graham and Svolik checked their survey data against an actual case, the Montana congressional election that pitted the Republican tech mogul Greg Gianforte against Rob Quist, a Democrat best known for playing the banjo and other stringed instruments. On the day of the election, Gianforte became irate with a line of questioning by Ben Jacobs, a Guardian journalist, and threw Jacobs to the ground. Gianforte, who won the election, later pleaded guilty to assault. On election day, voters at the polls knew about Gianforte's violence, but those who mailed in their votes early had not. And in this real-world scenario, Graham and Slovik's prediction came true. About 3.6% of Gianforte's votes on election day vanished relative to the votes counted before voters knew he had body-slammed Jacobs. Assaulting a journalist makes a difference, but not much of one, and particularly not to extreme partisans. 3.5% does not sound like a very healthy number. It means that nearly everyone you know who supports democracy is basically lying, which probably includes you and me. In the privacy of the voting booth, we reveal our hypocrisy. The terms of the hypocrisy help explain how authoritarian rule begins. Orban in Hungary, Erdogan in Turkey, these figures came to power in elections. Why do people elect them in the first place when they are showing signs of authoritarianism? The key to understanding this is to understand when people are actually willing to vote in favor of democracy and against something they like. But don't worry, there is some good news. The hypocrisy is evenly distributed. Democrats seem to be just as willing to break democracy as Republicans. On one measure, Republicans do slightly better. They are more willing to respect the First Amendment rights of their opponents. Republicans actually want to punish those other Republicans who want to bar far-left protests. Democrats also punish Democrats for barring far-right protests, but not as much. Second, we have to bear in mind that democracy is not the only thing voters care about. It is a strange thing to undervalue because it is the foundation of our political system, but it would also be strange if a mild offense against the system canceled out all other political issues. We should consider what the optimum percentage should be, the number sufficient to keep politicians from assaulting journalists. If they anticipate that pushback, they won't attack. Evidently, 3.5% is not enough deterrence because Gianforte went berserk on Ben Jacobs, but maybe 10% would have been enough. Think of these democracy-loving voters as antibodies. You don't need a bloodstream brimming with antibodies to keep a disease at bay. You just need a certain number. 90% would be excessive, but at 3.5% you get violence against journalists and voter ID laws that discriminate against minorities. Finally, people are good at identifying undemocratic behavior as undemocratic. No matter the state of democratic decay, ordinary people seem to understand what it means to destroy democracy. The Turkish people knew that stopping your opponents from campaigning is an attack on democracy. Venezuelans knew that shutting down a newspaper is an attack on democracy, and Americans know that too. This at least suggests that some understanding of the principles of just government remains, even if just government is getting bargained down to fire sale prices. The concept of democracy is not lost, and any concept that is still widely understood can still be revived. So what are your thoughts? Will you still vote for someone who does something undemocratic but checks all the boxes for you? Leave a comment down below and let's get a discussion started. And as always, take care of your money. Today's book of the day is The Company I Keep by Leonard Lauder. I'll leave a link to the book down below, and if you prefer listening to it on an audiobook for free, I'll also leave a link to a 30-day free trial to Audible. You can choose this book or any book to listen to, and even if you cancel before your free trial is over, you can still keep the book and listen to it whenever you want. Last thing before you go, a financial education is the most important kind of education you can give your kids. That's why I created Smart Money Parenting as a way to prepare you and your kids about the highs and lows of managing your own money. I'll leave a link to the course down below so you can check it out.